So are you thinking about buying pre-construction real estate? Is it good? Is it bad? Well, in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the top pros and cons of buying pre-construction real estate. Let's dive into it. Now, a few months ago, I personally closed on a pre-construction condo unit in Welland, Ontario. So this content is fresh in my mind to share with you my experience of what it was like buying a pre-construction condo. Now, a little bit of context, this isn't my first pre-construction investment that I purchased before. About 4 years ago, I purchased another pre-construction condo unit located again in Welland. Now, the process was seamless and I still own that unit till today, and it's been rented since day one. So I would say it was a pretty damn good investment property. But like any investment, there comes some risks. And in today's video, I'm gonna dive into some of the pros and cons and share them all with you. Now, before we get into it, what's up guys? If we haven't met before, my name is Andrew Kulakowsky, and I'm a local real estate agent and team leader of the Living in Niagara real estate group at eXp Realty. And my team helps hundreds of people just like you buy and sell real estate here in the Niagara region, and we absolutely love it because that is what we do. So if you've stumbled upon this channel and you're thinking about buying or selling real estate, whether it be tomorrow or in the next 2 years, it doesn't matter, then make sure you guys do one thing. Reach out to me. I would be happy to chat with you guys. You're always welcome to call, text, email, or our favorite, schedule a Zoom call so we could do a meet and greet and I can figure out how I can help you with your future real estate needs. Now, diving in, no particular order, the first one that's very important to understand is understanding the deposit structure when buying pre-construction. Now, this probably sounds pretty self-explanatory, but the deposit structure for buying pre-construction real estate is a little bit different than buying a resale home. Now, the typical structure of a deposit when buying pre-construction is as follows. Now, these amounts can vary and percentages can vary, but typically you'll have to provide a check right at signing. So usually that's around 5% of the sales price. You would have to provide a check as your initial deposit once you've signed on that dotted line on the contract. Following that, you typically see 30 days after, you'll have to provide another 5%, and then perhaps 30 to 60 days after or 45 days after, you have to provide another 5 to 10%. And then typically following, depending on the length of the construction project, you would have to provide the final deposit amount at closing. Now, what is the good of this? Obviously, you don't have to give up your entire lump sum of cash that you've maybe been saving for a long time all at once. Again, depending on the length of the construction project that you are purchasing the pre-construction real estate from, that could be anywhere from 6 months out. It could be anywhere from 4 years out, depending again on the scale. The benefit of it is that you get to spread it over a certain amount of time. That gives you some time to plan out your financing. Perhaps you haven't saved the entire deposit amount yet, and that will buy some time in order for you to do that. Now, the bad, once your deal is firm, keep this in mind that you are obligated 100% to that deposit amount. I've seen in many cases people forget about purchasing their pre-construction and they forget about the timelines for the deposit, the amount of the deposit that is due. So these things are very, very important to make sure you're disciplined and that you have that timeline in your calendar so you do not forget. And the last thing is typically deposits for pre-construction are a lot larger than, say, buying a resale home or condo. What I mean by that is, usually anywhere from 3 to 5% total based on whatever the purchase price was is usually what you'd have to give as a deposit amount when you're buying a resale condo or home. Whereas in pre-construction, the deposit amounts are typically quite a bit larger. So keep that in mind. And number two is that development timelines are not guaranteed. You've probably heard stories before of builders having delays with construction projects. There are a lot of things that are out of control when it comes to building and developing construction projects. As you can imagine, there are some things you want to think about. Now, if you are thinking of moving into that unit, you're selling your current property, you're selling a home, and you're trying to work out your timeline so it's perfect, so you plan on moving in and coordinating your closing dates. I mean, these are all things that you need to consider when buying this pre-construction project because a lot of the time it doesn't always go according to plan. Now, things that come into play or delays that potentially happen with pre-construction are weather problems. Obviously, those are things that are out of our control. Labor shortages, material shortages, development problems, things with the developer themselves, and perhaps zoning problems, permitting issues. There's a million different things that could come into play. But I know from experience in working with clients and from my own personal experience that usually it's inevitable inevitable that the building will usually have some sort of delay when it comes to closing time. So make sure you are prepared for that to happen. Now, moving on to number 3 is pricing and appreciation. Now, this one's pretty important. Like any type of real estate, people who are buying real estate, whether it be for personal use or if you're an investor and you're looking to make a profit on your purchase, these are two big things that you want to consider. Now, rewind 5 years ago, many people got rich off buying pre-construction. I'm sure you all have heard stories. And yet that was a very profitable endeavor for many people. Fast forward to 2025 and those tables have turned. I could tell you from personal experience. One of the big benefits of buying pre-construction when it comes to pricing is that you're buying at today's price. You're buying at today's market value. So whatever that price is that you agreed upon on that day, the benefit is that depending on when you're going to close, whether that be in 6 months, 2 years, or 3 years, the goal is that you hope the real estate market goes up and that prices go up so you have appreciation by the time you actually close on that property. Now, obviously the benefit to this, as I previously kind of touched on, was that whether you're moving in or whether you're investing in it, always good to have some sort of appreciation, is that knowing that you're closing on a property that's worth more than what you paid is always a really nice thing to know. However, the disadvantage or con to buying pre-construction is if the market takes a shift. Now, going back to my own personal story, I just closed on a condo in Welland. We purchased it at $735,000 originally. That was about just over a year and a half ago. At that time, of course, we were a little bit bullish, me and my business partners, thinking that the market was going to continually go up. Even me as an experienced real estate agent thought that. We were definitely a little bit jaded, and as I mentioned, we were overconfident with regards to where we thought the real estate market was going to go. And it's the same old story. When out of sight, it's out of mind. And fast forward to today and closing on that property and realizing what that market value of that condo is worth today, we probably took somewhere of a loss of upwards to $80,000 if we were to turn around and sell it today. Now, we did choose on renting the property and we're going to keep it for a little while for HST and tax purposes, but knowing that the property is worth less than what we purchased it for wasn't really all that fun to hear. So in relation to that, you want to be very, very cautious and make sure you are prepared that if the market does take a downturn, that you are prepared financially to absorb that hit. Now, there are some solutions to that and we will get into that later on in the video. But before we move on, guys, if you're enjoying this video and want to continue to see more videos just like this, then do me a huge favor. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and tap that notification bell so you guys will be notified every time I post up videos just like this one. Now, moving on to number 4, something major to consider are the closing costs. Now, the closing costs that you want to consider and make sure you explore before signing on that dotted line are as follows. You want to make sure you understand what the development charges are. Sometimes development charges are passed down to the end user, the consumer purchasing that unit. Sometimes the builder themselves or developer will absorb all of those costs themselves and take on that 100%. Sometimes it's a percentage of the development cost that you'd be responsible for, but you want to make sure you understand who is paying for the development charges and that it's not a surprise at closing that fee is on your adjusted cost. Other things like land transfer taxes, property taxes. Bear in mind with any new construction unit, your property taxes are not assessed yet. So you want to make sure and that you are prepared for a property assessment in the future. Supplemental property taxes are things to look out for, is that a lot of the time it takes time before the city actually prepares their property tax bill for you. And a lot of the time you will get that supplemented tax bill as your first tax bill, and it's quite a bit higher than what you've anticipated. And bear this in mind that because it is new construction with property taxes not being assessed yet, typically they're assessed much higher than what they really are. Other fees like carry-on warranty costs, those are things that you're going to have to pay at closing. Builder fees, so if there's any upgrades or anything that wasn't absorbed or built into the price of the actual purchase, those are things that you have to pay at closing. And other fees like lawyer fees, which is naturally part of your closing costs, as well as occupancy fees, which we're going to touch on later on in this video. And the fifth thing to look out for is the builder reputation matters. This one I can't stress enough. For me personally, the real estate that I've purchased in pre-construction, I've known both developers, not personally, but to the extent where I know their history. They're local builders, local developers, excellent track record. They've been in business for many, many years. I know people who work for them. I know suppliers who supply and do work for them. So this makes me feel much more comfortable when purchasing pre-construction. I'm sure you've heard many, many horror stories before where you've got fly-by-night developers changing names, coming in and starting a development, and then all of a sudden going bankrupt and then just going MIA. So one of my biggest pieces of advice is make sure you feel comfortable with the builder developer that you're working with. And now moving on to number 6 is what's called the cooling off period. Now what the cooling off period means is that it's relating specifically to new condo purchases in Ontario. Built into the contract, typically you will see a 10-day cooling off period in the fine print. What is this for? Basically just gives the buyer, the consumer, time to pass along their buyer documents to their lawyer, to have their lawyer review, make sure that everything spells out okay and that everything looks good. It also buys the consumer a little bit of time to make sure they've made the right decision. Now, when it relates to buying resale or new homes, that does not apply. Bear in mind, I don't know the legal history on why it only applies to condominium purchases, but it does not apply to purchasing a new home or new construction or any type of commercial real estate. And number 7 is assignments. Now, what is assignments? Now, an assignment sale, when relating to real estate, basically all it is that it's someone who is selling their pre-construction house or real estate or whatever it is prior to them actually closing on the property and title changing hands. What this is essentially they're just selling the paperwork. They're advertising the paperwork to see if there's another buyer who may want to just assume that contract. Perhaps that buyer likes the location, they like the house, maybe there was no inventory left and they didn't have the opportunity to buy that new themselves. There's many different reasons why someone would want to buy or take over or do an assignment sale. However, it's really dependent on the type of market at that time and market conditions. And I stress this one. Assignments typically are more attractive in a seller's market where less inventory, there's high buyer demand. And like I said, buyers maybe didn't have the opportunity to buy that specific piece of real estate or that house or condo that was maybe available at any given time. Now, fast forward to 2025, we've got lots of inventory. So assignments aren't as attractive as they were. Also keep in mind too, with the market taking a shift and us being heavily in a buyer's market right now, for a seller to advertise an assignment, there needs to be some sort of appetite or some sort of incentive for a buyer to assume an assignment. Why would you buy someone's condo that they've already purchased if you have 10 others to choose from and perhaps negotiate an even better deal from the builder directly? So these are all things that you want to keep in mind when, assuming or seeing these assignments advertised. Now, from the other side, as a seller, perhaps you run into some trouble and you can't close on the property, or your finances have changed, or something in your life has changed, and you're going to have trouble closing on that property, or you need to kind of pivot and make a move. Giving an assignment or having the option for an assignment is a really great benefit to have. You want to make sure from the developer or builder that you're working with or that you have to deal with is that they are allowing assignments. That's another thing, is that the builder developer are the ones who give you the green light whether or not they're open to you assigning that sale. There's also assignment fees that come into play too. Many developers or builders will actually charge you as the person who purchased it an assignment fee. And typically, from my experience, I've seen that be anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 is what it could cost you for you to assign your condo or the house that you purchased. Moving on to number 8, interim occupancy. What does this mean? Well, I'll tell you from personal experience, this was a little bit of an eye-opener for me when we closed and purchased our condo unit. Now, over the past 3 to 4 months prior to us closing on the property and of course it becoming 90% complete, what happens is that the builder has a set timeline in which they are basically giving you as the purchaser essentially a guarantee to when building is going to be completed and when you can actually take physical occupancy, meaning that you could start to move your stuff in and actually live in it. Now, this doesn't always mean that the building is completely done, but it is deemed complete that whichever units they give you the green light on, that basically just means that you are okay to move into that unit and live and use that unit as you can prior to actually closing on it. Now, this usually is only for condo purchases, which is why I'm kind of giving you my experience. From my personal experience, our condo was set to close. There was a little bit of a delay. However, we got the green light and the notification from the builder that occupancy has started. Now, once they give you that notification that occupancy has started, at that point in time, they will hand over the keys before you've actually closed and paid for that condo unit. Part of the reason reason why they do that is obviously they want to start collecting the costs that are involved in carrying these empty units. Now, occupancy fees are very expensive. I'm going to stress this, and I learned this the hard way. Our occupancies for our unit was around $5,500 a month, which was a little bit of a tough pill to swallow. But unfortunately, we had no say. There is no say to negotiating on what the occupancy fees are going to be. Now, you're probably asking, what are the occupancy fees? Like, what makes up these occupancy fees? Now, here are the things that make up the occupancy fees. The interest that is being charged on the unpaid balance. So as you can imagine, if it's a $700,000 unit, interest costs are quite high. Number two is the estimated property taxes. And again, I touched on that previous. These property taxes have not been assessed yet. So they're all an estimation. And again, typically an inflated estimation. So they're usually quite high. And then lastly is the projected common expenses or common element expenses that the unit owner is expected to incur once they obviously close on that property. So with all of these things combined, as I previously mentioned to you, our occupancies were extremely high. And I know other clients and other friends that have purchased pre-construction condos before, or recently I should say, and a lot of them were in the same boat. Occupancy fees ranging anywhere from $3,500 a month up to $6,000 a month for units that really weren't that crazy expensive, anywhere from, $450,000 up to $800,000. And moving on to number 9 is HST. Now, if you've ever purchased a new piece of construction before, then you'll know that HST typically 99% of the time is included in the purchase price, much like a resale purchase or a resale sale, I should say. Now, with HST, because it is inclusive in this sale price, the builder, being a company or a corporation, is HST compliant, meaning that when the consumer pays the HST to the builder then in turn submits their HST rebate, and they get the HST rebate back from the CRA. That's pretty normal process. However, one thing to bear in mind, the one that I recently just closed on and my partners, we were not moving into the property. So it was not a primary residence. So one of the things that is crucial here is that we actually have to pay the HST up front. And the reason for this, again, is that it's not a primary residence. We're treating it as a business. And because of that, we had no choice but to pay the HST. Now, these are one of the things that I can tell you from personal experience, that the builder or developer or sales representative that you're dealing with directly at the builder, they are not telling you this. They are not responsible to tell you this. It would be nice if they did, but these are things that are really, really good to know, or things that you're going to want to know if you're treating it as a rental property or as an investment purchase. Paying that HST up front, again, is a huge part of your closing costs. As I previously mentioned before, you're going to want to know that. Now, with HST, if you are not moving into the unit and you end up obviously renting that unit out, getting a lease, you are able to apply to get your HST rebate back from the CRA. A couple small things that you do with your accountant: provide them the lease, the purchase documents, and they will apply for you to get your HST rebate back. Now, that could take anywhere from 1 month up to 6 to 8 months, again, depending on the time of year, how busy the CRA is, a bunch of different reasons why, but your accountant can help you look after that. Now, that HST rebate amount is $24,000, so it's a big chunk of change, especially considering that we're in down market conditions right now. We obviously are taking a bit of a hit on that condo, so getting that HST rebate back is certainly going to help the cause. Now, to sum this all up, guys, this video I hope was super helpful and kind of providing you some pros and cons and shedding some light on what it's like buying pre-construction real estate. There are obviously a ton of benefits to buying real estate in general, investing in real estate in general, and buying pre-construction. However, like I said, there's a lot of things you want to look out for. So I hope this video was helpful, guys. If you are interested in buying new construction or new real estate here in the Niagara region, or want to know what's happening here with regards to new development in the Niagara region, then make sure you guys reach out to me. I'm always happy to have a conversation with you or chat with you about what the state of real estate is here in the Niagara region. But that's all for now, guys. I hope you enjoyed our video, and I look forward to seeing you all very soon.